Hi everybody, I'm Rachel from Mastered. Great to see so many of you here. I can see there's about 20 of you so far, and I can see in the chat that you're coming to us from all over the world too. Hong Kong, Arizona, New Orleans. I think you guys are the furthest away. I think Hong Kong wins furthest away from London so far. Can't remember what time it is in Hong Kong right now. My times aren't so good, but hello, thank you for joining us. And yeah, hope it's not too late or too early where you guys are. We're going to get started in about 4 minutes, just waiting for some other people to join us, and then we're going to get going. I'm really excited to talk to you about trends and show you a little bit of what you're going to have in store when the program kicks off. These kind of hangouts are going to be a pretty regular thing for you, so hopefully you're going to enjoy it. Okay, I'll be with you in a couple more minutes. See, we've got Scotland and Florida joining us now. A few more extra names from across the world. Nice to see all of you here tonight. We're going to get going in a couple more minutes. Okay, hey everybody. I see we've got a few more people joining us. Czech Republic, Malta, Houston, Texas. Good to see you all. So it's 6 o'clock here in London, and that means I'm going to get started talking to you. So, big welcome to Mastered. Thank you for being here this evening, and thank you for joining us. My name's Rachel. I think you probably heard a little bit about me before this call, but I'm going to just tell you a little bit about who I am and where I come from. So I've been a beauty journalist all my life. I was the editor for Hairdresser Journal online for 5 years. So that's the website that goes with Hairdresser Journal magazine, which is about 145 years old, a weekly trade magazine over here. That's where I started out, and that's where I started learning about hairdressing. And then after that, I moved to Mastered, where I worked with Guido and Sam McKnight on their programs. And now I work freelance for lots of different hair brands and for hairdressers, doing lots of different things for them. So social media, features, but also trends, and kind of looking at how we can make hairdressing more exciting, more relevant, and kind of really elevate it in the eyes of the rest of the world. So I want to talk to you tonight about trends. That's what I've been brought in here to talk to you about. And trends are so important for hairdressers. And I think when we think trends, often when we come from a salon background, your first thought is kind of what your clients bring in off Instagram and show you that they want doing to their hair. And actually, there's so much more to trends than that. There's so many more interesting areas you can find out about trends, areas of research, and trends mean so much more than they used to too. It's not just about a look that appears and is fashionable for a few weeks and goes away. There's so much more to it than that. And that's what I'm going to help you kind of start to understand a little bit tonight. Obviously, when your course begins, you're going to be learning loads more about trends. There's going to be loads and loads of information to come. So this is really just a starter, just to get you thinking about trends in a slightly different way. And then you can kind of have this stuff in the back of your mind as you go about the rest of your kind of day-to-day salon life, or when you're doing shoots, competitions. All these ideas can kind of be there in the back of your head. So you're kind of just thinking about all this stuff. And when you come to start the course in January, you're going to be really prepared, and your mind is going to be open, ready to learn, and kind of think about trends in a more interesting way. And why is that important? Okay, so it's not just so that you're doing hair that's more interesting than the salon down the street. It's so that you're keeping your clients excited. It's so that you're keeping yourself excited. And it shows the rest of the world that you're really engaged with fashion. Hairdressing is part of the fashion industry, and it's really important that we think of it that way, and that we understand the impact of the things that we're doing and how we can make hairdressing really exciting, really interesting, and yeah, just kind of make it more fun for all of us. So that's why trends are exciting. That's why I love trends. It's something I've been really passionate about my whole life. Before I fell into doing journalism, working on the beauty side of things, I did fashion at university. So I studied fashion, made clothes, all that kind of stuff. And then I did another degree after that in fashion journalism. And in both of those areas, trends are so important. And you kind of learn to look at them not just as this one-off thing that's happening, but as something that's really deeply rooted to what's going on in the wider world, what's happening in politics, what's happening in society. And that kind of knowledge of trends has always stayed with me and made it really interesting. So when I see a beauty look on the catwalk, I'm not just thinking, oh, this season they're doing this color hair. I'm thinking, okay, what does that mean? What does that tell me about this designer? What does this tell me about what's going on in the world? And all of these things are really important. And you kind of have to start to approach trends a bit like a detective, trying to unravel them. And I know that maybe sounds a little bit like crazy kind of high level stuff, but it really isn't. It just makes your life more interesting, makes you understand your clients a little bit better. And ultimately, it helps you to be more creative, which is what we're all in this for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little presentation for you now about trends, and just to talk to you about some of the ideas that I find really interesting. So this is a new bit of technology for me. So hopefully screen share is going to work, and hopefully you are now going to see a presentation that I've put together for you. So hopefully you can all see that. Is it all working good? Can you see? I'm hoping so. That looks good. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit to you about how trends work and why trends work, and a bit about, why we should be so interested in them as hairdressers, and why it's not just for people in the fashion industry, how it's relevant for you as well. So as discussed, this is me. You can see my Instagram on there. I know you're all sharing your own, but make sure you give mine a follow too, please. My email address is on there and website too. If you want to get in touch with me, any questions about anything we talk about, that's all there for you. So yeah, I am a hair editor, which is a strange job title, I know, but that's basically what I do. So for the last 12 or so years, I've pretty much solely written about hair, and I've always worked in the trade side of the industry, so working with salons, with hairdressers, people like you, and really kind of helping people find the most excitement and enjoyment out of their jobs and turn that into creativity. So something I'm really, really passionate about. I know people say this all the time, but honestly, you are more than welcome to email me, drop me a message anytime. I'm always happy to help with any questions. So let's talk a bit about trends. So once upon a time, there was two ways that we access trends. They are the trickle down approach and the bubble up approach. And this was pretty much the way things were done up until really relatively recently. And this idea, they're not new concepts. The trickle down theory, that was first talked about in the 1800s, and the idea of copying people's style is certainly nothing new. People have always looked up to people above them, to style icons of the era, and copied what their clothes are. But the idea of being inspired by working class or street culture, that's a much newer concept. So I'm just going to explain those two a little bit for you. Even though they're not the only way we access trends now, they certainly were once upon a time, and they kind of give you a good insight into the trend process. So the trickle-down effect, when we talk about that, that means a look coming from somewhere high above and coming down to normal people level. So once upon a time, this would have been looking at what royalty were wearing, looking at what high society were wearing. In more recent years, we would talk about that as being what was happening on the runway or the catwalk. So a look is presented at Fashion Week and shared online. A fast fashion retailer, so someone like Zara, will copy those looks from the catwalk within a couple of weeks. And then maybe a few months down the line, those looks will be available in mainstream fashion retailers everywhere across the world. And then eventually elements of the look will infiltrate all aspects of clothing and fashion. I think everyone probably knows that Devil Wears Prada moment where they talk about the blue sweater and how she thinks it's just a blue jumper, but actually it's related to a fashion show that happened like a whole season before. So this is what that process is about, really. Always nice to have a visual on this. So here we go. This is an interesting, just something that I pulled together even yesterday. These ideas are still going around, nothing new. So Gucci Autumn Winter 15, that's when they started moving towards this kind of vintage, kooky, kind of layered look. They showed this on the runway it would have been sort of the spring of 2015. A few weeks later, Mango brought out the looks in the middle that you can see, which are pretty much a direct copy. Then in 2016, John Lewis, which is a high street store over here in the UK, they brought out this dress, which, you can kind of see where this has come from. It's basically the same pattern, it's the same colors, same sort of shape, same silhouette, but perhaps a little more flattering, a bit more suitable for every day. And then the look on the right is a dress from Walmart, which came out in 2017. And you can really see there how these ideas of pleats, the color, the floral pattern, it's all there. It's in a kind of completely different shape, but the idea is there. And that really gives you this idea of how a trend goes from catwalk to the real world in really short process of time. There's going to be a chance for you all to ask questions, by the way, so hang on, and I'll come to you guys all at the end if you have anything. Just keep adding them in the chat, and we'll get onto those. So yeah, the bubble up theory is kind of the opposite of the theory we just talked about. So this is where ideas from subcultures or street style, people in those kind of genres will start to develop their own independent looks. So these are people who are not following fashion. They're probably going against the trends. They're creating these ideas of their own, and they're turning it into a look. Then what happens next is designers are inspired by those subcultures or those concepts, and the designers create looks inspired by them. And then the circle starts again. So those looks then go to the mainstream, and then they become everywhere. So an example of that, I think one of the most famous ones is something like the grunge movement. So in the late 80s, early 90s, we had bands like Nirvana here on the left, wearing these clothes, which were kind of the antithesis of anything that was happening in fashion at the moment. Fashion at the time was all about kind of supermodel glamour, brand names, like brand logos a go-go, and bands, people like Nirvana just completely disregarded that and started these looks. In 1992, Marc Jacobs created a collection inspired by the grunge kids that he saw. It's really crazy to me when you look at this picture in the middle. That is a photo shoot from 1992. I mean, that could be a photo shoot from any magazine you look at today, but that's beside the point. This was 1992 when he did this collection inspired by grunge. Really shocked the world. People were sort of really offended by this collection. It was so far removed from what was fashion that people just couldn't believe he was doing it. And then, you know, this kind of shows you how trends just become part of the mainstream, because that trend is something we've seen on and off over the years, kind of non-stop, right up until this week when I was looking for kind of something to finish this series of images was this Net-a-Porter Christmas. This is their Christmas collection for 2018. And I think it's really, you can see directly the influences from grunge there. And this is kind of what happens when a trend just becomes kind of saturation point. Like, this is no longer a trend. It's kind of just another way of dressing now. I like to think that the kind of hairdressing equivalent is something like balayage. You know, it was always going on, and then it was a big trend, and now it's just a thing that people ask for. It's not even a trend anymore. It's just kind of a service that we can offer. So that's how trends start from the bottom, build up to this, and then kind of just become the norm. So now what's the case? The bubble up and trickle down theories are kind of the classic things that were taught in trend school, but actually now things have kind of gone a little bit out of the window. Trends are universal. The trend cycle is incredibly fast. Trends born and die overnight online. Something will be a big headline news story for like a week and then it will go away. And your clients are more clued up than ever about this stuff. And, you know, they may even know more than you. And, you know, whatever their inspiration is, they're probably going to be following people on social media that can help them with this. So, you know, if they love Kim Kardashian, they're not just going to be following Kim, but they're also going to be following Mario, her makeup artist, Chris, her hairstylist. They're going to be following all those people, and they're going to know overnight what the new hair look is, what she's doing. Similar, if they're a big fashion fan, they're going to be following Gucci. They're going to be following the hairdressers that do the Gucci shows. They're going to know what these looks are really quickly. So it's kind of scary to think there's so many diverse sources of inspiration now. It's kind of coming at you from absolutely everywhere. And, you know, that can be scary. It can be scary to think there's so much inspiration out there. How the hell do I know what to do? How do I know which trends are going to last? How do I know which are the ones that are interesting? And yeah, that can be scary and overwhelming, but I think it's good to think of it more as an opportunity. So there is a lot of opportunity there for you to do something new, for you to try something, for you to choose the trends that you find interesting. I mean, to me, that's the really exciting part of this, having lived through this kind of period of change, is that now we don't just have 2 trends per season that you have to stick to. Now we have whatever you want. You can choose the trends that speak to you, that are relevant to your work, that speak to your aesthetic, and you can just choose those ones and go with them. And that also helps you, you know, find clients that have a similar mindset or relevant kind of themes. It all helps you kind of find your tribe a little bit better, and you don't have to follow every single trend that's out there. You just need to find the ones that interest you. So on that note, how do you stay ahead of this? How do you find trends? How do you know what to do? I think this is the question people ask the most. I get it so often, is like, how do I find the trends? How do I know about the trends? It's kind of a difficult question, but, you know, basically you have to be observant. You have to be excited about the concept of looking for trends. You have to keep an open mind, and you need to think outside the box too. So social media, there is no getting away from it. It is where trends happen. So Instagram and Pinterest in particular are a really great place for seeing what people are talking about. It can be overwhelming, as I said. There's so much going on out there. It's kind of a question of who do you follow? How do you keep up? To that, I would say follow the people that you find interesting. Follow the hashtags that you find interesting. It's about, you have to be true to yourself, and it's good to have an idea of what's going on in the wider world, but it's also important to be true to yourself. So follow those people, the hairstylists, the colorists, the makeup artists, the designers, the photographers that you love, and look at what they're doing. And I think that's the important thing, is not being a passive observer, but actually being really kind of interested in those images and looking at them and thinking, okay, what's going on here? What do I like about this shot? Why do I like it? And just kind of being a bit analytical. On that note as well, fashion is obviously a great one. We can't ignore what's happening on the catwalks, because it does make a big difference. It is where people are looking for trends, and it does have an impact on things like clothes and shoes and accessories, and all of those things impacts us in the hair industry as well. You know, if a certain look is in fashion, then that's going to impact on hair as well. So it's important to be aware of that. One of my favorite places to be inspired by trends is interesting places. I love to go to somewhere interesting and just kind of sit and observe and see what people are doing, find out what's happening in the interesting places near me. This place on the left in this picture you can see is a bar that's close to me in Southeast London. And this bar is full of the coolest people. It's full of all these kind of teenagers. It's really near the art school. So there's loads of sort of 18, 19-year-olds there. And it's really interesting to just be there, be amongst it, observe what people are doing, see like, okay, this is how people are wearing their hair. This is what people are doing with their makeup. This is the kind of accessories that are popular. And, you know, everywhere you are in the world, there's going to be somewhere like this. Even if you live in a really kind of small town place, or you kind of, you know, there is always going to be a bar or a park or a place that people hang out. And I think just putting yourself into those spaces and observing what's happening is a really good way of picking up on trends. And then finally, news. It's really important that we educate ourselves about what's happening in the wider world, because that is always going to impact on style. And it's always been the case, and it always will be. You know, historically, so many trends come off the back of things that are happening in the wider world. So many trends came out of the back of the Second World War, for instance, like the American rockabilly look was popular over here because people had seen American soldiers. You know, there's so many examples of how this happens. So it's really important that we do stay up to date with what's going on in the news and kind of bigger picture things that are actually going to impact our industry. So when I talk about kind of being a detective and kind of reading trends, this is an example of what I mean. I think it's really good to dig deep on trends and look at them and find out what are they telling us and how can we use this. So just to take a couple of examples to kind of illustrate that point. So pink hair has been a trend for the last kind of 4 or 5 years in particular. But that doesn't just mean, oh, people like pink hair now, or there's better pink hair colorants out there. I mean, those things do happen. But what pink hair also says to me is that that's about optimism. It's about acceptance. It's about creativity. It's about freedom. You know, pink hair is everywhere now, and we kind of take it for granted. But, you know, even 5, 6 years ago, you wouldn't go to a job with pink hair. That was something that was reserved for people that were kind of really living on the outside of style and were kind of really rebellious. Now it's a completely mainstream thing that people can just do at the drop of a hat. People from all age groups, different everything, people are going for something like this. And that tells us that there's been a shift in the way that the world is looking at beauty, and that we're more accepting perhaps, or that we're more open to experimentation. The guidelines are a little bit blurred now. Again, something like ponytails does a similar thing. When we first started seeing ponytails back on the catwalks, which, you know, really we hadn't seen much of for decades, you know, and then we kind of started getting them back, particularly with people like Guido or Alexander Wang, ponytails started being a thing. And off the back of that, we also see the rise in this athleisure trend, and the fact that people are obsessed with juice cleansing and going to hot yoga, and, you know, this kind of rise of sport as like a really a thing you should be really proud of, a big activity, and the fact that people wear trainers every day, the kind of wellness movement, meditation, all of these things. I know it kind of might seem like a reach, but they're all kind of linked back to the fact that people are wearing ponytails because of this. They're not. It's a general kind of feeling in the air that's kind of sometimes hard to identify, but it tends to be symbolic of a bigger shift in something that's going on. When you start digging down into these trends and kind of starting to really think about them and think, well, what do these mean? You actually find out quite a lot about the state of fashion at the moment and in the state of the world. When I talk about being interested in the news, that's a really important thing, which I think we often forget, but people kind of working in trends at the highest end are really, really obsessed with, and rightly so, because it does really impact on us. And it might take a few years, it might take it's a slightly slower process, but it does make a difference. So obviously diversity is a huge buzzword at the moment, and we're lucky to be living in a time where diversity is happening, people are more accepting. It's very, very slow, but it's getting there. What does diversity mean to you as a hair colorist? It doesn't necessarily, you know, it means you need to be able to color different types of hair. I mean, you maybe need to think about how you're approaching the way that you sell color in your salon. You know, are you coloring men's hair as well? Is there an approach to color that is completely universal? Diversity is a trend that is not going anywhere. It's something that we're only seeing more and more of. And that might have started kind of as a fashion statement, but now it's kind of part of our life, and rightly so. But it means we need to adapt to that. Bespoke is another kind of big trend that we hear a lot about, in particularly in the fashion kind of tech industries. You know, we think of things like our Alexa speakers or our phones that recognize our face. right down to things like in the fashion industry, this trend for kind of monogramming and getting your name on things. Le Labo perfumes allowing you to blend your own perfume that has your name on the label. All of these things, people really care about things feeling bespoke and unique to them now. People don't want to just feel like they're on a conveyor belt being sent through the salon and getting the same look as everyone else. So bespoke is a really big trend, and that's another thing that we can kind of speak to as hair colorists and think, okay, how am I going to make this person feel like they're getting a really bespoke service and they're not just getting the same standard thing that I give to everyone. Authenticity, another big buzzword that we hear in kind of every area. So, you know, in fashion, but also in lifestyle, in beauty, people, actually in politics as well, you know, people are fed up of kind of being lied to. People want honesty, people want truth, they want to know what they're dealing with, they want to know what's in their products. You know, authenticity opens up a really big conversation. And, you know, as colorists, okay, well, what does authenticity mean to me as a colorist? Maybe it means, you know, you're creating looks that, again, it's a bit like the bespoke thing, but you're creating looks that really work for somebody. You're not hiding what's their natural beauty, you're enhancing it. You're not, maybe the time where kind of these really bright block colors, you know, maybe people are going against that and they're wanting something a bit more simple. You know, for years we've seen the kind of Kardashian effect on Instagram with people wearing all of this makeup and doing all this contouring. And now we're seeing people moving away from that slowly back to something more natural. You know, we're seeing more kind of natural skin, natural beauty, kind of the whole woke up like this thing. All the makeup ads we see from brands like Glossier, it's about authenticity. And that's something that's going to be relevant to hair color too. How do you create a hair color that's authentic to somebody? It's about enhancing what they've got, not about masking it and creating something different. Okay, so what does this all mean? It's all well and good talking about all this, I know, and you're going to hear loads more of this when your course starts. But what does this all mean? And how can these trends help you as a colorist? And ultimately, like, how can they help your business? Because that's what it's all about. I think one thing about trends that I personally love and why I've been in this industry for 12 years and I still love it is because it keeps you excited and inspired by your craft. If you're doing the same thing day in, day out, you are going to get bored of it. And that's no fun. No one wants to be doing this. We chose this job because we like being creative. This is something we've chosen and we want to be a part of. So keeping up to date with trends and doing something new and trying something new keeps you on your toes. It keeps you excited. That in turn keeps your clients excited. When your clients are excited and engaged, they're going to keep coming back to you for more. If you're giving them something different that nobody else is doing, then they're going to be much more interested in you. It's as simple as that. And, you know, clients do care about trends as well, even if it's not like the client who comes in wanting a bleach blonde peroxide bob overnight because Kim Kardashian's done it. You know, it might be something more subtle than that, but people are aware, more aware than ever, of what's going on in the world. And there's absolutely no reason why you should kind of underestimate the fact they might be interested in that. And then finally, being ahead of trends and doing something slightly different can really provide a competitive edge in your business. So, you know, that's going to keep clients coming back for more. It's going to have people adding on services. It's going to increase retail. If people know that you're doing something interesting, they're going to talk about you and that's going to send more clients back through the door. So it's really important that you are ahead of these things and you're not just kind of serving out the same thing that you've always done. And that as well as being creative and experimenting, you're doing that kind of within the perimeters, of, you know, helping your clients out and making them feel excited. You're not just being like, oh, hey, I've got a cool new idea for a technique, I'm going to do it on this person. You know, it's about working with them to create something that's bespoke for them, that's exciting for them, and that's going to keep them coming back. So how can you use this in the salon? Here's just like an example, and I specifically chose something non-color related because I thought it would make life easier. So in 2016, Alexander McQueen, Guido showed this look with all the hair accessories, this girl on the left. This was a look that Guido created, for the fall winter show. So that will have happened at the beginning of 2016. This kind of hair accessories all over the place. Look, all the models had completely different looks, all just covered in hair slides. So that was a look that he did. In 2018, we started seeing these kind of looks coming into the Glossy magazine. So this is from April 2018. So it's probably shot beginning of April, maybe March time. And Look magazine is a magazine we have over here in the UK that is really, really mainstream, high street glossy magazine. You can pick it up in like any store across the country. And they're showing this kind of look, which is all about piling on the accessories. Still editorial, but it's within kind of a mainstream approach. September 2018, so kind of a few months back, shops like ASOS, Topshop, all the kind of high street stores, online as well, they're selling hair accessories. They're absolutely everywhere. You can buy them super cheap. You can get loads of them, different colors, different things. There's more choice than you could ever have wanted. Okay, so that's all well and good. That's the story of a trend. We know that bit, but how does that mean anything to you? Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, I was speaking to a salon who has bought all of these cheap and cheerful hair accessories. They've bought loads of them because they've seen it's a trend. And now they've built a dress-up box in their salon. So when the clients come to take their before and after pictures, they're able to put these accessories in and they can create really fun looks, which do really well on their social media. The looks are just way more interesting than your bog standard, like back of a head shot. It's a bit more fun. It shows a bit of fashion to it. It makes great content for your Instagram. This also means they can kind of do with one client, you know, 3 or 4 different after looks. They can do like the straight up finished color. They can do a bit of a styled look with some accessories in. They can change the accessories. And this is just like a box of cheap and cheerful hair accessories they have in the salon. So when it comes to getting the photos taken, they can make it a bit more fun. That's the kind of thing that, you know, as a client, it's really exciting. That's the kind of thing you will tell your friends about. That's the kind of thing you will put on your Instagram and talk about. These are these little things that we can be doing as salons, having listened to trends, being aware of them, then turning it into something that's actually going to help our business and actually going to make money off the back of it for us. It's just a really simple idea, but it kind of shows you how this trend has gone from start to finish and turned into actually kind of a business point. So when you guys get started on the course, you're going to have no end of kind of information, assets, useful places to go looking. But I thought I would share with you a few places that I like to look for trends right now. So these guys are all on Instagram. The middle row shows you their Instagram account. On the left-hand side, we have WGSN, who I know you're going to be hearing from. They're kind of one of the biggest trend agencies in the world. They basically find what's happening in 5 years' time in terms of trends, and they present that back to you. They're all about discovering what's happening in like the coolest cities in the world and distilling that into trends. And they then work with kind of all the brands that you know and love, and they are telling them what's happening. And on their Instagram, they're telling you this stuff too. That's not information that is hard to access anymore. They're sharing that with you on Instagram. Pantone would be another one. I think you all should probably know Pantone. If you don't, I'm sure you will learn to. They're the kind of biggest color direction house in the world. They predict what colors are going to happen and what colors are going to be big news. Their color of the year is always really interesting to watch. It does tend to dictate the mood for fashion, for beauty, for everything. So they're a really interesting one to watch. And again, their Instagram is full of really beautiful shots that kind of bring those colors that they're finding trending. They bring them to life in a really beautiful visual way. Fashion Snoops is another trend agency that I like, as is the Future Laboratory, which is the next one along. They're both trend agencies who, again, they travel the world. They're looking at all sorts of areas, so fashion, music, beauty, retail, science, everything, and kind of putting together trends from that. And again, they're both going to be sharing those on Instagram, telling you different trends that you can look for. It's no coincidence that I put all these images across the bottom. This is what they're all sharing. So these are kind of the last few posts from all of them. And you can kind of see this really like nice kind of duck eggy blue is starting to become a thing, I guess. So yeah, they're 4 brands that I would really recommend following. You're going to get loads more information like this when the course gets started. So don't worry for now. They're just some ideas to get following and kind of just keep yourself inspired. So that's it in terms of my presentation. Hopefully that was interesting for you guys. And again, I can take questions. There's questions coming through. I know you're more than welcome to ask me anything. But the next little bit of today's hangout is going to be with Wella, obviously. So I'm going to show you a little video now, which Wella have created, which is all about trends from their perspective.
So, guys, today, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Rainer Sauter. I'm Vice President Creative Hair at Wella. And aspect of my job is trend research, trend development, watching trends pretty much 24 hours.
We've seen a lot of change in trends with Wella, in particular over the last few years, how we kind of approach trends or how trends are launched. What are the biggest changes that you've seen, or how have you seen the change?
There's been a seismic shift in the world of fashion and beauty. Gone are the days when trends were dictated by big houses in Paris, New York, and Milan. Communities united and enabled by technology now lead the discussion. Fashion movements are no longer seasonal. Trends can appear and disappear within weeks or last for years. People have changed. They want to feel more like themselves because they know it's what makes them happy and confident. The hairstylist is perfectly placed to navigate the way forward. Both as a leader and as a listener, the stylist can tune themselves to the truth of a client and fuse that truth with inspiration from the world that surrounds them.
So, Rainer, if we're not talking about, big fashion houses or architecture as inspiration, what is the trend? Where is it coming from?
The trend is always an holistic look, but for Wella as a leader in color, we're looking for color palettes, which are really on trend. So our message is pretty much like a color message, and our latest color theme is Insta Vintage. It is inspired by an authentic, modern, and fresh approach to hair color. It is to explore different expressions of sophistication. The colors become more refined and subtle, yet never lose their uniqueness or lack character. Colors are defined by the shape, the saturation, but especially the finish. And that finish is more looking like a filter, and that gives them the vintage feel.
So, Rainer, does this mean that trends are dead?
No, trends have never been more alive than today. But it means that it's harder to catch up the right trends because trends are evolving as we speak. I think the catwalk is dead or is dying because you can't predict trends anymore. And our biggest challenge at Wella is to foresee trends and to explore trends. And when we identify a trend, to make it come to life in visuals and tutorials and moving content within 24 hours.
Well, Rainer, thank you very much for coming in, and thank you very much for coming to talk to the guys.
Sure.
It's been a pleasure having you.
It was my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Hopefully that was helpful and exciting and interesting for you. I know there's a few questions we've had through already, but don't forget you can keep adding them in the box on the screen in front of you. I am now going to hopefully introduce Edward Sweeney, who is Capabilities Manager for Wella. Are you there? Are you there, Eddie? I'm not sure if he's working on the line at the moment.
Hello, Rachel.
Oh, there he is. We have him.
Hi, Rachel. Sorry, long pause there. There was a slight delay.
That's okay. So how did you find that, Eddie? Tell me what's happening for you in terms of trends right now.
Well, first of all, sorry. Hi, everyone. I'm Eddie. A little bit disorientated there from the pause. I'm Global Capabilities Manager for Wella, but I'm also going to be one of the mentors working with you guys on your journey throughout Mastered. So I'm very looking forward to seeing how you get on, and I wish you all the best of luck on Master Color Expert Online. Rachel, thank you very much. That was absolutely amazing. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, my pleasure.
I'm learning those already. There was a lot there that, had got loads of stuff to the front of my mind.
And it's really interesting to me that, we hadn't spoken that much beforehand, but, where Wella is coming out with trends at the moment is kind of in line with what we were saying. And it's definitely that real kind of movement to Instagram, social, digital is kind of taken over the catwalks in terms of where trends are coming from.
Well, I think what's really interesting now about trends is it's no longer about brands, or it's no longer about fashion houses, or the days where people would look to these, big names for inspiration. It's the person who has, 2,000 followers who works in a hair salon in the middle of nowhere that's setting the trend because of an Instagram post, or a young girl who does makeup on YouTube is, telling the world how they should do their makeup. I just think it's fascinating how it's evolved and changed and quite rapidly.
Absolutely. It's happening kind of faster than ever. And as I mentioned in the presentation, I think, there is one hand that's kind of overwhelming that it happens so quickly. But it also, I think, it levels the playing field. It makes it exciting because it means you can choose whichever trend you want and you can kind of go on with that one and you can find your own little niche out there and really go with it.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, and I'm just looking through the list of who has the comments here. But something that's really resonated with me was, someone wrote up, change your client's hair so that they don't have to change their entire wardrobe. And I think that is so relevant right now because things are moving so much faster, and we used to be able to say, oh, the spring summer looks for hair are going to be this, and in autumn winter we're going to see much more autumnal colours, but now it's like, oh, you know, this is what we're seeing for the next month. And you know, the plan for Wella going forward is we'll get back to you in a month and tell you what you're going to see the month after that, because we don't know yet. We can't predict it. We can discuss, we can be open-minded to it, but we can't be too specific anymore.
Absolutely, and I think that's, you know, the fashion industry, and like I say, hair is part of the fashion industry. You know, it's very much, it's always been quick moving, and it's really exciting to be in a time where we're seeing that really sped up, and it allows you to kind of, it does keep you on your toes, but in a really great way that you can just kind of constantly be excited about what it is that you're doing. And I thought it was really interesting just then when you were talking about what are the trends for autumn winter, for instance, going to be. One thing I find really interesting on that is that we live in such a global community now, and things are shared online in such a instant fashion that, you know, when we talk about autumn winter where I am in London, that's not the same autumn winter that the guys are having in Australia or in LA. You know, trends, we kind of have to be a bit more open with things now, and that kind of again makes it more exciting because we're talking on a global scale. We're not just talking about, oh, you know, it's autumn, winter, it's Christmas, that means people are going to be cold and wearing scarves and things, because that isn't the case in other countries of the world. And I think that really opens it up to just being so much more fluid to what we want the trends to be, and we can kind of dictate our own journey a little bit.
I totally agree, and I think you mentioned in your presentation, you were talking about bespoke individuality, and Reiner in his presentation gave you guys a little insight into the new trends that Wella will be launching in the new year. And like I said, it's not like that we're saying anymore that this will be the trend for the entire year or even the entire season. This is what we're starting with, and it will naturally evolve. But the main message is, yes, we're talking about an insta vintage or that vintage lived-in colour and that colour palette, but we're not restricting it to reds and greens, you know what I mean, or blondes and brunettes. It's more about the finish, and it's more about the individuality, the tailored effect of the colour and how it's done, as opposed to what the colour is itself.
Absolutely, and I think that kind of idea of tailoring trends and making them bespoke is not only exciting for clients, but that's really exciting for you as a colorist, that you get to approach every client or every model, every look you're creating. You get to approach that as a new challenge, and that's really fun.
As a hairdresser, and very much a hands-on hairdresser in my job, and I love the individuality side to it. When I trained as a hairdresser first, sorry, I was just reading a message there to make sure everyone could hear me speaking. When I trained as a hairdresser first, everything was very specific. It was, this is how you highlight, this is how you freehand, this is how you do whatever you want to achieve. Whereas now it's, you can do this, but you can also do this, and you might want to do this, and you can combine all the different things together. The industry has completely revolutionized. I've been hairdressing 13 years, and it is, for me, it is a completely different experience, training, upskilling. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think yeah, you're right. It makes training so much more interesting. It's not like the old days of being taught, here is how you do your sectioning patterns and you have to stick to this. It's that classic thing, I suppose, of you have to know the rules to break them. So once you've kind of got that initial training, it's over to you to now be as creative as you want. And we're lucky to be living in a time where product technology is at an all-time high, training from guys like you at Wella, and client knowledge is such that we kind of have the choice to be able to create really interesting things. And I think that's just such an exciting time to be in. And especially for these guys on the course, you know, they're about to kind of open up this whole year of really exciting training.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. again with the accessibility of everything now. Things can move so much faster, and people can get education in so many different ways. Look at Master Colour Expert online. I recently started in this new job, but before that I was an MC coordinator in the Wella studio in Dublin. So a high percentage of my job was teaching NCE, face-to-face in your typical classroom scenario or your hands-on workshops. And over the last 2 years, that evolved in how we do that, and people were doing more project work. But people were able to bring things to the course very quickly. When you assign little tasks or when you get homework, you know, people maybe had it done before they had less ability because of the accessibility of new information, new trends, new development.
Perfect. So we've got a couple of questions here that have been sent through. So Marianne is asking, where can we search for the newest trends? So I know in my presentation, I mentioned a few Instagram accounts I follow. Honestly, I love Instagram for trends, but I think it's really important that you make your Instagram feed kind of as curated as possible, just because we're all guilty of spending far too much time on there scrolling through loads and loads of stuff. I think it's quite good if you can follow lots of people, but kind of make them interesting people who are actually going to really inspire you and not just kind of be clutter on there. So, you know, follow trend agencies, follow color brands, follow Wella on there, follow, you know, artists that you find inspiring, or musicians, whatever it is that you kind of seek inspiration from. I think Instagram is definitely a great place to find new trends, but yeah, you kind of have to be a little bit curated about how you do that. What about you, Eddie? Where do you go for new trends?
Well, from a Wella perspective, you always have wella.com/education, and we are constantly keeping it updated to make sure that there is new content all the time. I suppose, again, it's just so popular at the moment. Instagram, I have all these different people in all these different, not just hair, but all these different industries that I follow for inspiration and what they're doing and what they're looking at, as opposed to the result. It's like very little of my Instagram is actually hair. It's kind of more about concept and idea. And they're the kind of people I like, and they're the kind of people I follow.
I think that's great. And I think also, you know, like I said before as well, just I think keeping your eyes open. And I know that's kind of a really obvious thing to say, but you genuinely can find inspiration in so many interesting places. I mean, I was in Topshop, the high street store over here in the UK, just yesterday, and the mannequins in the store have got this like really beautiful hair, well, wigs, and it was just so beautiful and so interesting what they'd done with it, and it kind of got me thinking. And I think kind of wherever you go in the world, you know, if you're keeping your eyes open, just looking at people, and being observant to the world around you, I think there's so much inspiration to be found everywhere. And I think, you know, as creative people, it's your job almost to look at those kind of sources of inspiration and then think, actually, what can I do with this, and turn it into something that is, you know, a realistic end outcome in color.
Absolutely, and I always think it's important to look at the colour combinations and what is around you in different ways. And for me, it really is kind of sometimes more about the finish of the colour and what the effect of the colour, as opposed to what the colour is. Like, is it one matte? Is it very high gloss or reflective or shiny? Is it, you know, what is the kind of effect in the finish? I always feel it's more important than the colour itself.
Perfect. Well, so we've got another couple. Oh, no, carry on.
I was just going to say, Chris, a colleague of mine, has also come on here to say that there is a blog on wella.com to follow on trends as well. Just to add that in there.
Yeah, of course. Make sure you follow that one. So we have a question from Shauna, which is really interesting, and I feel like it's something that I've tackled many times myself, of how can I bring the diversity of trends to my clients who are in corporate America? Do you want to go first, or shall I?
You go first if it's something you find interesting.
Cool. Well, I think the thing to remember there, Shauna, is it's like with every trend, okay? You have to break it down into ways that work for your clients. So what I mean by that is when we watch, for instance, the Chanel Couture show, that serves to give us the big picture idea of what Chanel is talking about that season. That's a big, spectacular, fun, exciting event. Who's wearing those clothes? Like maybe one person, okay? And you have to think of trends sometimes in the same way. This big color effect might be a really big trend, but it's probably not going to be worn by most people. Whereas, you know, taking that same example, your Chanel lipstick in a new shade of coral that's kind of inspired by that couture show, that's something that women everywhere are going to pick up and wear. So it's about diluting those trends and saying, what can I take from this that's going to work for my client? Maybe let's use the example of pink hair, because I always use that example. Something like pink hair, okay, there are so many ways you can wear that. You know, let's say maybe you have one client who goes for a full head pink hair. Maybe you have somebody else who has just like a tiny little discreet section. Maybe you have a washout color on a blonde. You know, there are so many ways that you can take an element of those trends and just use them diluted. You know, there's also ways that I see salons being really clever about this, and which I always love to see. Let's say again, millennial pink has been this trend for a couple of years. What's to stop you serving up millennial pink juices in your salon, or painting the bathroom millennial pink so that when people are taking the selfies, they can get a bit of that color in? Not every trend is going to work for every colorist and for every salon. And, you know, that's the way it is. People are going to just want corporate looks sometimes. That's fair enough. But, you know, maybe there's an element of that trend that you can bring to them, and just a tiny spot of it that they're going to be able to take away and use themselves. And I think also, you know, the role of the colorist and the hair salon owner, you know, it's about education as much as anything else. Even if they don't want that look, they will probably, you know, who's to say they're not going to appreciate hearing about it, or you sharing some insight, you showing them some model looks that you've done and saying, oh, here's a color that I did. You know, it might not be right for them, but I think it's always our job to educate people and share those trends with them. Eddie, go for it.
Well, how do you follow that?
I think about this a lot.
You know what? That's great. I think you've kind of pretty much, as well as a lot more points that were in my head. I suppose the only thing I would add there is to play with longevity and how different products and different things that are acceptable to us now last different at the time. So years ago, if you were to do something like a vibrant red, you had to commit to it. Or if you think about, again, the example of pink hair or peach hair or green hair, which has become really popular at the moment, we now have products that can do it from a temporary perspective. So you can really capitalize it, really dilute it down, and use a product that will last 2 to 3 shampoos. Introduce something in a small way or in a small area, and, you know, go low commitment, and then build the commitment, and, you know, build the trust, and figure out how comfortable your client is and how far they're willing to go in a slow, controlled way.
Absolutely agree. So we've also got a question here about what about clients that come in month after month and ask for the same thing? Any advice? What would you say to that? How would you get those clients that come in every time excited about maybe trying something new?
For me, I think it's always important to remember with that style of client is what is new. And we always taught, you know, as educators at a beginner level, you know, change them before they change you. But we have to really look, I think, the more educated you become, as like what is actual change. And I think as busy hairdressers, those clients, we get into a rut with as much as they get into a rut with their hair. So I suppose bringing it back to basics and asking more and more questions, you know, having that, taking the time to review and just asking that question, how is your hair? And just not speaking. I always find customers, when, as a hairdresser, we try and give so much, and sometimes it's hard to just sit back and let them speak. Sometimes they can tell us stuff that we don't realize. And if you learn to listen, I think you learn to give more opportunity or give better advice, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right that, you know, a consultation shouldn't just be this one-way conversation. You know, you need to pass on some of that education to them and kind of get them excited.
Absolutely. And again, we're all like, you guys are all becoming master color experts, so I'm not going to do, you know, I guess how to do a consultation, but I do think the more experience we get, the more knowledge we have, the more we want to share. Whereas a big part of using the knowledge that we have is just to sit back and listen and pick out key words that they might say that, you know, that will give an opportunity to introduce new into that client who's had the same colour for the last 10 years. And change for that person might be, you know, a secondary tone. So if they've had, you know, not to speak well here, but 6 stroke 7, you know, just move them on to 6 stroke 7, 5 could be as radical as going from jet black hair to blonde hair for that person.
That's it. Every client has their kind of different comfort levels, and yeah, just a tiny little change can make a really big difference for them. And I think that's so nice that you mentioned that, because it doesn't have to be a huge change. And I think sometimes when we think of trends or kind of introducing trend-led color, we do think of these really big changes, or actually it can just be a tonal change or a slight shift in color. And I think another thing kind of on my side from this would be, you know, don't be afraid to kind of educate those clients and share things that you're excited about within color with them. You know, that's what your social media page is for. Your social media isn't just to show off all the beautiful work you do. I mean, obviously it's for that as well, but you know, you can be using that as like your own kind of living, breathing mood board and sharing things on there that you love. You know, if you've seen some great color that you love, I don't know, let's say in an exhibition at an art gallery, you know, tell those clients about that and say, we saw this beautiful shade of orange and we're thinking we could do something with this. Or, you know, build maybe mood boards in your salon. You know, that's a great team training exercise anyway, a great thing for the staff to do. But, you know, you could build together some mood boards of kind of, here are some color trends we've identified, and share it with those clients. I can see Emma here saying in the chat, you know, the more you educate clients, the more they're wowed, and it shows you care for them. I totally think that's agree. And, you know, as a client myself, if I go into a salon and the hairdresser is saying to me, oh, like, you know, we'll do your color as you want, fine. But also, you know, just we've created these in the salon recently. We've been doing some projects. We've been looking at new colors, or, you know, just bringing it up in a conversational way and saying, actually, you know, this is interesting. We're seeing a lot of this happening this season. You know, I think don't ever be afraid to talk to your clients. I mean, obviously, you guys are the experts in consultation and, you know, feeling the mood, whether they want to talk. But a lot of the time, people are really interested. And again, I say that as a client myself. I'm not a hairdresser. I love being told about these things. It makes me feel like, wow, my colorist really knows her stuff if she's talking to me about these things. I'm interested to know that. So don't ever underestimate the fact that your clients want to hear your color knowledge. They want to know what you're doing and what you're learning about.
I think that's really, really important. And I think it's really, really important that on Master Color Expert you share their journey. It's just, I'm reading these comments that are popping up here, and I think they're amazing. You know, Emma here, I think the more you educate your clients, the more they are wowed. And absolutely, and when you are going through your Master Color Expert journey and you're telling the stories about what you're learning and you're sharing insights into new information, it's just going to gradually it's going to progress you, and your clients are just going to keep progressing and progressing with you. And I think if you bring them on the journey, they will naturally develop. And I think it is important to bring them on that journey to push them to do something different or try something new.
I think that's brilliant. It's a really good point. So we're kind of coming to the end a little bit now. I wanted to ask you guys out there who are watching along, you know, how are you going to take what you've learned today back to the salon? What are you going to do differently in the next few weeks? We've got a little while till the course gets started. So is anyone out there feeling inspired to go and do something different? Go and try something new in the salon? Let us know in the comments there if you're going to be doing anything differently after today's conversation, because we're all really excited to see kind of how you get started on the program. So while you're thinking about that and kind of telling us what you're going to do differently, Eddie, how excited are you feeling about the start of the Master Color Expert? Are you feeling ready to go with it? Are you excited?
I am so excited. Like I said, it's my heritage. Like in Wella, it's my passion. I am such a believer in Master Color Expert program, and I cannot wait to see what these guys do with it. And I can't wait to follow you all online. So you have to follow me on Instagram too, Eddie_Wella, and say hi. Let me know that you're doing the online program, because I'd love to follow you guys. I'd love to know what you're up to.
I think that's really important. And Emma said here again, you know, and Atara as well, they've told their clients that they're doing the Master Color Expert program and they're really excited. And I think this is it. Like, don't be afraid to show off about these things. What you're doing is really exciting and you're going on a really great journey. And for your clients to know that you are so dedicated to what you're doing, that you're investing your time and effort in that, that's really powerful stuff to see. And I think that's something that clients are really excited about, is knowing that you kind of not settling, you want to be better, you want to keep pushing yourself. That's really exciting for them. So definitely keep talking about it. Make sure you follow Eddie. I can see his Instagram has been added there in the chat. That's good. Glad to hear it. And yeah, you know, make sure you're tagging us in your pictures, telling people what you're doing, because all of this kind of learning is it's a really important process, and clients do love to know about it. So don't be afraid to share, tell them what you're up to. Yeah, very exciting times. I see here Tara saying she's going to take some time every day to follow some trends, see what I'm loving, share it with my clients, and keep growing together. That's really exciting. I'm very happy to hear that, Tara. And I think, you know, I'm really excited to see how you guys start taking trends and working with them and turning them into something that's right for you and your clients. So I think that's one of the things to remember, is not every trend, you don't have to sort of take every trend and copy it entirely. You know, it serves as a starting point. You're the creative people, you get this as a starting point, and then you take it away and you do something different with it. So it's really exciting. Amy here saying so many light bulb moments, more inspiration in the world than just on social media. Totally agree with that one. I love social, but I'm also, you know, the world is a big and interesting place. There's a lot of great stuff out there to keep us inspired. And, you know, the thing with social media that's great, but also maybe a downside, is that what you're seeing, everybody else is seeing. So, you know, if you want to do something a bit different, you do have to push a little bit further with your research. So very exciting. And Alexandra here saying what you said, Eddie, about a light pink for a blonde, change can be both small and big. So yeah, lots of exciting things coming through. It sounds like you guys are all really excited. So we are now coming to the end of the chat. Any final words from you, Eddie, to these guys before they get started?
No, I'm really enjoying seeing the comments, and I'm really enjoying seeing how you guys are enjoying this already. So it just makes me really excited about the whole Master Colour Expert online experience. So this has been as inspiring for me as I hope it was for you.
Absolutely, it's been brilliant speaking with you all. Like I said, my details were on the slides. I'll stick them in the chat as well, so you can always drop me a message or follow me if you want to ask any questions. For now, I just want to say a big thank you to Eddie for sending us the amazing video over, for being our Wella man on the inside today, providing us with loads of expert insight. So thank you, Eddie.
Oh, thanks very much, Rachel, and thank you very much for a very inspirational presentation. I see you put a lot of work into that. There's a lot of meaty content.
My pleasure. And yeah, thank you to all of you for joining us this evening. It's been really nice seeing you all and kind of getting started on this. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you in the classroom in the new year. Okay, good night.